everyone. My name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. And today we're talking about polyamory in media because boy oh boy is there a new show that's recently come out and I simply cannot get it out of my head. And now I need to share that curse with all of you because one of you cursed me by telling me about this series on one of my Friday night live streams, and apparently the only way to remove the curse is to tell other people about it. So I'm sorry. But what am I talking about? What is the source of this hex? A little show called Polyfamily, of course, the latest reality television offering from TLC, which, if you know anything about the history of that network, that should tell you where we might be going. Yep, the network that brought us 90 Day Fiancé and Sister Wives said to themselves, you know what group of people could really use our delicate touch to promote greater social acceptance of their lifestyle? Polyamorous folks. And the result is far, far worse than I could have ever imagined. So let's talk about it. For right now, I'm just going to be talking about the first episode because as I am recording this, the second one is out, but the third has not yet been put on streaming. You will very soon find out why it is absolutely not necessary for me to have watched the full season before making this video. I might decide to make another covering the rest of the season, but honestly, I don't know if they're going to make it that far. Foreshadowing. So, what is Polyfamily? Who and what is this whole show about? Well, it's about a set of two couples who live together in one household as part of a polyamorous arrangement. I would call this polyfidelity because at least the intention is that their relationships are closed and not open to new partners. But they usually call it being in a quad, and that's all they refer to it as. Each of the two couples are married, and each wife dates the other one's husband, and vice versa. I saw, as just like a side note, a sort of frustrating tweet about this part of the show on Twitter, and essentially they were saying that people shouldn't be allowed, i.e. the straights shouldn't be allowed to call themselves polyamorous because what they're doing is basically just swinging, and you can't really have a real polyamorous household unless everyone is boinking each other in every possible combination. And as an ace person who's also polyamorous, no. First of all, as well, one of the women in this arrangement is pansexual, so we love the classic bi/pan erasure. But more than that, of all the problems you could have with this show, and trust me, there are many, one of them is not, oh my gosh, how dare the straight people be straight? Who would have ever considered that should be a possibility? I can make a whole video about this, and I think maybe one day I will, but guys, can we maybe just let the straights exist and be cringe? I don't think it's healthy to fixate on the fact that straight people are not queering their relationships enough, but anyways, the point is, this is definitely a legitimate way of doing non-monogamy, and I just can't be bothered to pick at it more than that. So anyways, one of the couples is Taya and Sean, and they are, drumroll please, 28 and 46. Oh, the age gap discourse people are going to love this one. And we're going to talk more about them later. But the other couple is Tyler and Alyssa. And they met when they were 18 and 20, and they're now in their mid-30s. What I immediately picked up on while watching the show is, based on how they describe it, it really sounds like this is their first long-term polyamorous arrangement of any kind, which is sort of nutty when you think about what's going on here. Imagine going from a monogamous closed marriage to living with another couple like that. And you might be thinking, oh, well, they probably dated for a couple of years before they moved in together and they just got really lucky and they're super compatible and that just happens sometimes. But no. That is not what happened. Apparently, Sean said after knowing each other for a few months, as in literally 2 or 3 months, that they would be living together within the next 6 months, which would be a bad idea if we were only talking about a monogamous couple living together within that time period, even if they didn't have kids. But it is borderline unthinkable for people who already have children and want to make a blended family. So I'm gonna put up a red flag on screen every time a red flag behavior happens. It's gonna be on screen a lot. But this one is just blazing on fire red. Like, I'm not accusing anyone of anything yet, but there is something kind of weird, right, about a mid-40s dude trying to jump the gun to start living with another couple who already has 2 young children, because Tyler and Alyssa already had kids. Like, if he was doing this with a single mother, I think all of us would rightfully find that behavior disturbing. And it's even weirder when you realize that Sean has also pushed to be able to have all of them parent all of the children equally, and he also gets mad if you say something like, my kid, in front of him. But I'm already sidetracked. I have barely introduced our cast of characters yet, so back to what I was trying to get to. Really seems like no one here came in with any meaningful experience in polyamory. Taya and Sean seem to have gotten into it by trying to go unicorn hunting, aka finding a third, because they both like, and they say this in the show, females. And well, if you know anything about non-monogamy, you know why unicorn hunting can be problematic. It's probably one of the worst ways to try to get into polyamory because it oftentimes ends up leading to the third being treated as a lesser disposable object because, you know, they're the third. But they ended up meeting Tyler and Alyssa instead. For Tyler and Alyssa, they got into it because, as Alyssa would put it, it's every man's fantasy to be with more than one woman. And as Tyler would put it, if one is great, 2 is better, or something like that. What does Alyssa want? I don't know. It's all kind of gross. And like, lots of people get into polyamory for kind of messy reasons, so like, far be it from me to totally judge them from this point of view. Like, you can get into polyamory in a messy way and then end up being a good polyamorous partner. It's just sort of funny how they're hitting like every single one of the stereotypes collectively between the 4 of them. And then, when you meet the quad on screen, the dynamic between all of them is apparent right away. Sean is definitely being set up as the villain for this series, which is a common thing in reality TV because you need to have somebody or something to drive the conflict to make it more interesting. But I don't think this is something that is only being manufactured in the editing room. It's possible he got coached to say certain things by producers because we know that does happen, but it genuinely seems like it is his personality to be picky and passive-aggressive based on how they talk about him from previous experiences that were not shown on screen. The first time we see him talk, though, it is literally him poking at the quality of sleep he had because of his pregnant girlfriend. How dare she? Just nice, dude. And that continues throughout the whole episode with him speaking over people and making needling comments and overall displaying a disappointing, but not surprising, lack of emotional regulation skills for a man in his mid-40s. Tyler, by contrast, seems like a much more like happy-go-lucky golden retriever kind of dude and is probably my favorite person on the show. He probably has ADHD, though they don't really say so directly, at least not in the first episode, and I see a lot of his behavior in people that I've dated and known in the past. Naturally, this behavior makes Sean upset because why would you ever want to understand or be compassionate towards your metas when they're neurodivergent? Alyssa, who is Tyler's wife, works outside the house and seems to be one of the more put-together, organized members of the household. She can be sensitive and emotional, which I relate to, I get it. Although I worry it's also led to a lot of unhelpful rules that we'll talk about later. She's got insecurities about her husband's relationship with Taya because they're much more touchy-feely and sensual than she is with him. She's also a bit more like Sean as well, and that she likes to pick at people and tease them, but at least in this episode, I never really saw it come out in a genuine way beyond just kind of snipping at someone, which is not really a good joke in my book, but okay, maybe some people are fine with that. And then there's Taya, who's the youngest and in this episode is pregnant with the family's 5th child. I honestly don't have a lot else to say about her right now. We'll get more into her character in a little bit. Then there's all of the kids in this house, and I'm going to try hard when I'm editing this not to show any of their faces, but they make a point to show all of the kids' faces on screen, the 2 oldest in particular. In the age of family vloggers, I think we can all agree that it's pretty weird to use your kids for money by making them your on-screen talent, and I hope that they don't regret being put on the Polyamorous Family TLC TV show for forever. So, moving on, those are the people we need to know about. In the first episode, the crux of the plot is Taya is preparing to go in for an induction, and the family is getting ready to navigate adding a 5th child to the family. We start off seeing them getting ready in the morning, and we're introduced to one of the many rules they have for their arrangement. It actually kind of gets hinted at the very, very start of the episode when they talk about how, oh, it's my night with so-and-so, so I'm going to sit next to this person on the couch. Neither of the men have a permanent bedroom of their own. Instead, they swap rooms each night and stay with one of the 2 women, bringing their toothbrushes and their pillows with them. This has distinct sister wives energy, and I know that despite never having watched the show, but it goes even farther than that, as we later find out which person they are spending the night with also dictates who they sit on the couch with, sit in the car with, and who they are allowed to be physically intimate with. I guess at some point there was as they call it, a transgression at some point, where Taya and Tyler had sex when they shouldn't have been because it wasn't their night, so they had to come up with that rule. Naturally, of course, I think this reflects their lack of previous experience in polyamory. It's a well-documented thing that newer poly folk will have a tendency to make rules to avoid bad feelings the second they come up. The logic is, well, that made someone feel something really big, so we should avoid doing that again as much as possible. And that's how you end up with rules like, if she's coming over, she can only drink from our regular wine glasses and not our nice ones we got on our anniversary trip. Or, if you go on a date with Bob for 5 hours, your next date with me has to also be exactly 5 hours. Before you know it, you have ruled yourself into a hole and no one has any space to breathe. You have spent so much time avoiding the feelings that you never have a chance to grow and get comfortable with them. They just create a false sense of security, when genuine security comes not from avoidance, but from working through things and gaining security and trust as a result from being able to sit in that discomfort. You can practically feel the tension coming through the screen though. Alyssa gets security from these rules, I imagine, because it allows her to avoid the reality that her husband Tyler might want to spend more time physically next to Taya than with her. It gives Sean security that Tyler isn't a more desirable partner who people might want to sleep next to more of the time, when in reality, those things by themselves don't really matter in like a more is always better sense or equality is the only way sense. What should really matter is not, is someone getting more than me, but are my needs being met? If you feel comfortable and satisfied if you're sleeping next to your partner 3 nights a week, who cares if the other person is getting 4? Maybe you'd really be better off, I don't know, sleeping by yourself, Mr. Snorefest, but your ego won't let you because you've attached symbolic meaning to the act of sharing a bed at night. I guess I haven't mentioned this up to this point, so I probably should, but I've been polyamorous for about 9 years now. I have had several very long-term polyamorous relationships, including the ones I'm currently in. I've always practiced what would typically be called parallel polyamory, where I'm not like super close with my metamors, but we do share space sometimes, and we have a friendly rapport with each other when we do. But you know what I don't do? Tally up how many date nights people are getting. Keeping track of who is sleeping where and how often, or seeing who is getting more physical affection when we're in a shared space. Comparison is the thief of joy, they say. I learned a long time ago that I don't need more or even equal time to other people. I just want to be happy and feel connected in a way that's honest to who I am, which is going to look different than what my partners or my metamors want. But we work together to try and find arrangements that get everyone's needs met, including the need for solo time without trying to be exactly equal. When I've had feelings come up that have been similar to what we've seen in the show, like, hey, I've noticed that when we're at a party together, you aren't physically affectionate with me, but you are with this other person. The solution was not to then go, pay attention to me exactly the same amount as the other person, or go to half of the parties with me and half with her, but hey, this made me realize that I would actually like to get some physical attention from you in those kinds of spaces, and I don't want it to feel like you're hiding me being your partner. Lo and behold, when we were able to introduce some more affection the next time around, it never even occurred to me to check how much other people were getting, because that wasn't the point. I needed reassurance for me, and I got enough to feel okay. Problem solved. It happened once, solutions were found, they were followed, and then emotionally everything was fine. But I guess maybe that's why I am not in a TLC reality television show. But moving on, there are a few moments in this show that I thought were genuinely kind of cute, and I want to give them a little bit of credit. At one point, they describe how they divide up labor on the house, and it seems equitable, and everyone is getting to do what they are most suited for. The women aren't pressured to be stay-at-home moms, and I think that's a good thing. There are also little moments where the women relate to shared experiences with the men, like how they both kissed really differently. And that is definitely the kind of polyamorous experience I've had as well when chatting with menamors. But the good vibes, unfortunately, don't last for long, because then we just deep dive into some further insecurities. They're avoiding learning about the paternity of the newest baby, although it is extensively teased that they do find out by accident somehow. I have my suspicions on how accidental it actually is, because drama for television. They then try to put on it doesn't really matter, but I think it goes back to how they think this will somehow help them parent all the kids equally. Not to be weird or anything, but I feel like if you're parenting in a blended family and you're concerned that if you found out the baby wasn't blood related to you, you would treat them differently, that's a red flag. And if you would, why are you trying to parent a blended family 4 ways exactly equally across the board? Why cohabitate and co-parent at all? Tyler in particular seems worried it could cause feelings because he seems confident the baby is his, just based on his accounting of how often he and Taya have sex, i.e. he's worried Sean will be grumpy about it, which I'd be worried about making him mad too if I shared a home with him, but that's not a good thing. Honestly, a lot of this has vibes to the Reddit post that we did a reaction to a couple of months ago, where they also had this blended family and weird paternity things going on. I don't know, in my parallel polyam life, this all kind of seems like a really messy idea, and it is obvious to me that this is not coming from a we love them all no matter what, so it doesn't really matter kind of place, as much as a, oh God, we have to avoid having to have 50-50, exactly the same number of babies from each possible combination of parents, because people will feel jealous and insecure if we don't do that, because, oh Lord, you just know that's the place where it was gonna go next. If you are policing who can sit next to whom in a car each day of the week, you know that is the kind of arrangement where that would be a concern. So, having said that, maybe none of them should know. Competition babies should not be a phrase in the English language, but in this relationship, in this dynamic, I would be concerned about there being competition babies. But the insecurity does not stop there, folks. After getting a little snapshot of daily life together with people running errands, getting nails done, and building baby furniture, we're also treated to a parenting tiff between Tyler and Sean. One of the older kids is grounded, and I guess to Sean this means go be in the basement and don't even talk to the adults when you get home from school, because at least, thank God, they don't appear to be homeschooling these children. Small miracles. And Sean gets frustrated that Tyler tries to ask his daughter about her day at school. And Sean, I will fight you on this. Asking your kid about their day should not be a violation of a grounding. It should not be a reward for good behavior to speak to your parents. It could be a safety thing. What if they had an awful day, got bullied? What if they threw up at lunch? I don't know. You're denying that kid a level of emotional support that kids need, even when they are in trouble for something else, which was lying in this case, which is also suspicious for other reasons. I just don't agree with that at all, and it makes me concerned that Sean appears to have such a heavy hand going right to isolation. But I don't know. I'm not a parent. Have to disclaimer that as always. I just know that I never ever had a grounding in my life that included no adults can talk to me about my day for 2 minutes. And it makes me concerned he might be treating the older kids differently because he knows for sure that they aren't his. And that's why he's being so heavy-handed. That would be pretty messed up, right? But do you think Sean and Tyler talked about this directly? Not exactly. Instead, they loop each of their respective marital partners in who weren't there for the conversation. This is what we like to call triangulation. This is a dynamic that can happen in all kinds of relationships, but it is especially a problem in polyamory because it can really damage metamor and partner relationships in a way that is really difficult to recover from. Basically, what triangulation is when you have a problem with person A, but instead of talking to person A about it, you talk to person B. And hey, I'm not saying that venting isn't okay. We all need someone to talk to when someone we know does something that annoys us or upsets us. But this does mean that person A's opinion of person B will be colored by what you share and vice versa. And in triangulation, person B is often dragged into the conflict. This could either be directly through trying to mediate the dispute or pass messages, or through the original instigator saying, person B agrees with me. They think that what you're doing is wrong and bad, so there, I'm right and you're wrong. None of this is healthy communication for adults, let alone those who raise children together and share a home. It's also a common tactic for narcissists, and I'm not accusing anyone of anything here, but that's maybe something to keep track of. I was actually kind of surprised to see Taya pushing back on this and saying that Sean needed to work things out with Tyler, including diffusing his attempt to be dismissive about the suggestion that they go hash it out on their own. A+ work for that one, Taya. She does this sort of expert maneuver where when Sean starts going, what do you want us to do? Knit together. Like, he's such a baby. She starts laughing and then says, yes, actually, I would love to see that, which allows her to maintain her original position that they need to work things out one-on-one on their own without it then escalating into a fight between the two of them that she's not supportive enough or doesn't understand him or something like that. And all of this makes me wonder, why was Sean so eager to cohabitate with a man he can't talk to and can barely stand being around? Living together was not the only way to make this thing work. You could have done a lot more. And was it really just because he was annoyed of the long commute trying to go to visit them in their rural part of Oregon? Because, of course, this is in the greater Portland area. Gotta apologize on behalf of my city here. Yeah, there's more eyebrows and more red flags being raised by the moment, people. Another point of insecurity raised in the episode, and it's frankly impressive how many they managed to shove into 45 minutes of screen time, is sex. Namely, jealousy/competitiveness between Alyssa and Taya. Now, Taya. I know I'm going to say it wrong at least once. I am sorry. But Taya has colored hair. She wears a leather jacket. Based on these two pieces of information alone, my chat and I were able to suss out that she was probably the kinkiest one in the group, at least in sort of the most likely to be a member of the BDSM community sense. Her whole vibe kind of gives me like stoner, little, middle, bratty masochist energy. Now, my radar is also personally attuned to ADHD having kinky masks, so I was also pretty sure that Tyler was kinky. And lo and behold, I discovered something while watching this episode that blew their whole case wide open. When Sean was shaving Taya's legs when discussing his spat with Tyler, I immediately clocked that she was wearing what appears to be a locking anklet. And I would know because I used to wear one too. And I think she may have a locking bracelet on her opposite wrist as well, but that's a little less certain. It could just be a bangle. Need to watch more episodes to see if it sticks around and if she takes it off ever. So anyways, she is clearly collared to at least one person in this group, and Alyssa is jealous of how much kinky sex that she probably has with Tyler. Do you want to guess how this is addressed? Do you want to bet that they, understood that different people are different and they can have different needs, and as long as their needs are being met, doesn't matter, how kinky they are compared to somebody else? Of course not. That was never going to happen. Instead, we have yet another classic poly scenario, oscillating between too much information and being nosy, and not taking in any information at all because it's too painful. Neither of those are good for dealing with jealousy. By the way, both women call this behavior competitive, but I don't care what they call it. It seems plain as day to me that it's insecurity manifesting through comparison, and I don't really know what to call that except for jealousy. A lot of people think they'll feel better if they get all of the details of what their partners are doing with other people, down to the very moment. And they're eaten alive by what they don't know, and they imagine all these crazy scenarios happening, and they think, if I just know everything, then I'm not going to worry anymore. But then they ask questions, and then they get hurt by the answers, and they start making comparisons. So then they fly in the other direction and say they don't want to know anything at all. both monitoring and avoidance will make the underlying problem worse in my experience. The healthier thing is almost always to have some kind of compassionate indifference, not allowing yourself to get bogged down in comparisons, but not running away from information either. But practicing radical acceptance and turning towards some amount of information is okay. I'm not really sure exactly where the line is on too much, but I think healthy is probably closer to, hey, I'm really glad you had a fun time during your scene last night. I'm looking forward to our date tonight. You still up for it? And not, don't tell me you had a scene. Don't ever mention her name again. It just really strikes me how this show, which is supposed to be about promoting wider acceptance of polyamory, really ends up just being a greatest hits list of all the pitfalls people run into very often. But instead of it being like a brand new poly relationship, they've been together at the time of filming 4 years and now like almost 6. I must say though, as a kinky person, I am both very intrigued and concerned about how kink could end up being represented in this show. I don't think my heart could take it if I had to deal with both bad poly and bad BDSM representation at the same time. And that's about it. That is the whole episode. We see a little bit of their home and daily life, the bedrooms, errands, there's chickens in there somewhere, and they go out with family to celebrate before the new baby is born, and there's feelings about, being accepted by family that I think is like a good thing to bring up because a lot of people have to deal with that. They have some fights, and then we leave things off about there. But that is not where our story ends, listeners. Remember all those red flags? How I thought that they might not be able to finish the season? Well, it turns out that one of our characters has a history, one that people have easily been able to dig up online. Disclaimer that most of this is from Reddit and TikTok, so massive grains of salt as usual. But I wasn't exactly expecting this to be reported in like the New York Times either, so if that's where the information ends up, okay then. But to start off with, these people were TikTok influencers because they all are these days. I'm not going to get into their TikToks. Just know that that's a thing. They actually have some kind of cute TikToks of Sean and Tyler together, like knitting or crocheting as a nod to the show, but I refuse to fall for their spin and propaganda. I know better. Based on what I saw on there, it seems to confirm something that they kind of tried to hide on the show, actually, which is that they actually met originally through swinging, and they each originally had been swingers before getting into polyamory by accident, which makes a huge difference. Like, they weren't intentionally trying to find, like, people to date necessarily. And, I think it makes a difference because if you are primarily or only motivated by casual sex and swapping and then get into romance kind of accidentally after that, I feel like it is just so much more likely that the emotional connection part is going to trip you up. Is that judgmental of me because I don't like swingers? I don't know. I just feel like if you're into dating other people separately and you start there and your relationships all begin from independent dating, it just puts you on a much easier path. Like, I guess at first I didn't even have a way to separately talk from each other. Like, they all had one big collective group chat, and I can't imagine that. Maybe we shouldn't have had the swingers who accidentally fell into polyamory once represent polyamory to the whole world. Never mind. I take back what I said about the tweet at the beginning of the video. They were right. They should just stick with swinging. Except for the bi-pan erasure. They were not right about that part of the tweet. But the rest, I understand now. But anyway, that is not even the important part. If you do the math on how long Taya and Sean have been together and how they met, you get a pretty concerning answer. According to their TikTok, they've been together for 6 years. At the time of filming, Taya was 28, which means she would have been 22 when they got married. But she definitely did marry him the same year they started dating, right? And they have an 18-year age gap. And he was her manager at work. So let's say that she was maybe 20 when they got together. That's not a good look, as the kids say. There's actually a pretty big TikTok about this that gets this part wrong. Like, they seem to think that they got together 6 years before being in the polycule, which I don't think is the case based on what I have evidence for. Like, it's bad enough as it is. You don't have to accuse Sean of marrying a girl when she's still in high school, because allegedly, this is where it gets really bad. This guy, Sean, was previously married not once, but twice at least, and they were still married when he began pursuing Taya. Gonna say it wrong again. Do I care? I don't know. In both cases, his now exes filed for immediate custody of their children under grounds of immediate danger. He didn't contest this, and now, outside of paying child support, he seemingly has nothing to do with either of their lives. except he doesn't do that because he doesn't work outside of the home, so therefore they can't garnish his wages for child support. They also tried to move past this on the show, or Sean did at least, because maybe he's embarrassed about not having a job, but he is most of the time a stay-at-home dad per their TikTok. I just assumed he had like a telecommute job, but I guess not. And do you know the other alleged reason for why he doesn't work outside of the home? Because he has been accused, allegedly, of having multiple instances of inappropriate conduct involving minors, such as having inappropriate conversations with one across state lines. This, again, really brings into question not just Sean's disciplining of the older children, but underscores why it is such a boneheaded idea to move in together so quickly with someone when you have kids. Keep in mind they started living together during the pandemic, and one has to wonder if all of this was hidden from the other couple until they'd already begun to nest together and were boxed in by the pandemic. I honestly see all of this turning out very, very badly in the long run. There are people online claiming to know this family as well as relatives, saying that CPS has been called on them for how the older children have been treated on screen, talking about the allegations against Sean, and how the local poly community started to ask questions about them and how that ended up falling apart. And it's not like TLC has a great track record with stuff like this after all. I mean, look at the Duggars. Look at half the families, if not all of the families they've ever made a feature television show about. And I don't know if it's a problem with being on TLC, making these families fall apart because of the pressure of being broadcasted and the creation of a narrative that'll happen in post. I don't know if they just like find toxic families and then like pretend, oh, we're gonna like make this thing that represents what it's like to like have, 8 kids, or, have, a quiverful family or whatever, and then it all goes sideways even if they have good intentions, or if they are lying about that and then they know it's for drama, but they're trying to pretend it's for a good reason. I'm not sure. But they really should have just stuck to TikTok, honestly, because the little bit of their TikTok I watched, I could see how people might like watching them without digging too far into it. Like, they're much more personable on there. I mean, it's a much just, like, more suitable format when you are filming yourself and you're getting to edit everything and not having outside people put together a narrative for you of what you're doing with your life and how you feel about things. So I think really should have just stuck to TikTok, honestly. Although I don't think they should have influence anywhere. Anything that has been said about Sean is any way remotely true. Again, all is alleged. All is based on things that I've seen online. I'm not saying that any of it is for sure real that we know for certain, but it does raise questions. And I think that if there are these level of questions happening about people, should they be given a television show to purport to represent polyamory in a really big way to a very large demographic of people? Probably not. And, we'll see what happens. I have a feeling like at least one member of the polycule is more litigious, and I'm a little nervous about that because I don't know how many other people on YouTube have talked about this show, but as a polyamorous person, probably one of the few making a video about this, because I imagine most people who are talking about this are just sort of like general like reality TV consumers. There was very little good representation of what healthy polyamory looks like, but knowing that they came from a swinger background makes a lot of sense for why that is. And, part of the reason why I don't talk about polyamory on my channel very much is because, kind of when you know what to do and you get into a groove of it, it's not that exciting. It's just, that part's not interesting. It's like, oh, you communicate, you set boundaries, you learn how to sit in difficult feelings, and then it's smooth sailing after you kind of work that stuff out eventually, right? So, when it's working, it's not exciting television, more or less, It's like, would they make a TV show about a functional older married couple who had no interpersonal conflict? Probably not, right? So I think we need to be cautious about kind of using this to prove that, polyamory doesn't work, or that, raising kids in polyamory is a bad idea. I think it's very clear that the issues here are due to the people involved and not necessarily the concept itself of cohabitation between 4 adults. Theoretically, I think that could work out really well for kids. But you just have to do it with the right people in the right way. And not everyone's going to, in the same way that a lot of monogamous households or households with divorce are totally dysfunctional. And some of them work great too, right? You can have divorced parents and be very happy and functional, and you have divorces where people are at each other's throats and going through court and drag you into it, and it's not pretty. But yeah, I just get bad vibes from Sean. I've also seen people say that Taya is more of the ringleader and like kind of an instigator. I don't know what to make of that, but you know, it's just messy. So I don't know if I'm going to keep watching it. I'm not sure if they're even going to make it through a full season. They're still having episodes come out. So we'll see what ends up happening there, because basically from the second that the first episode dropped, people were like, oh wait, I know those people, and there's some things that need to be talked about. Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to be that on that, y'all. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Didn't think that we were going to get a poly/BDSM reality television show, but I should have known it was coming down the pipeline. Obviously, because why not? It's such an interesting thing to talk about. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching. You can leave your thoughts, comments, and questions down below. If you did enjoy this and are ready, please do subscribe, because I make videos twice a week about all different kink and BDSM related subjects, as well as relationships, polyamory, and other advice. And finally, if you really want to support what I do and you want to watch along with me live and participate in my commentary, for commentary purposes, reaction to the show, if you would like to have a watch along with me, we do that over on Patreon. I think we're going to do it probably about every other week and watch like 2 episodes together, commentate on them, have conversations about polyamory in the back of that, and then, you know, mix in the usual Tuesday live stream stuff. But that's over on Patreon. Thank you all so much. If you already support me there, it means the absolute world to me. And until I see you all next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.